Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mile High Sports today. I'm Sean Drotar, Nate Lundy. Those we got the memo, flannel day with the snow and everything else going on.
Danny, do you have any Nirvana you can play? Like some Stone Temple Pilots?
Yeah, we can
anything
do that.
Involving grunge, flannel.
Yep.
I know it's not. Danny goes, it's not radio.
Soundgarden, Temple.
I know it's not radio. We turned the radio station off. I get that already. Yeah.
That's
Obviously
just tough weather around here.
Snarky son of a bitch.
Looking forward to getting a whole show in today. Obviously, the power yesterday around things, and it wasn't snowing, so
it just went.
Fingers crossed for today. Let's see how that goes.
It was great. It was just like, and I checked. We paid the bill. That wasn't what it was.
No, it wasn't us. You looked around at like all the buildings, it happens. But on a colder day, we'll hope it keeps going there. But Nate, the Broncos and the Bills, of course, have their playoff game on this Sunday. And one of the stories involved in this, of course, is Von Miller.
Yes, I remember him.
Yeah, I think most Broncos fans do. The all-time leader for the Broncos in sacks, 110.5 by a pretty wide margin. Von Miller had a chance this year. He's obviously a situational pass rusher at this point in his career, but he does have 6 sacks this year, which was good for third on the Bills. And as a result, he can still be a pretty dangerous player. Yesterday, he had the opportunity during the Bills press conference to talk about what it was like to face the Broncos. And he had a really interesting answer that was really well thought out. It had a lot of emotion and feeling behind it. And we wanted to give an opportunity to hear the whole thing.
I had 2 days to really think about it, and it's all love. I can't even start to play that delusion of it's hatred or I can't even start to play that game. That I will put myself so far in a place that's not even close to being reality. That would be it would be hurtful to the way I want to play. I love those guys. I love everything about the Denver Broncos. I pay close attention to the Denver Broncos. I haven't even talked to Bo Nix or follow him on Instagram or nothing like that, and I feel like I know Bo Nix just by staying in touch with Broncos country and staying in touch with the Broncos. I know they're building a new facility. They got new jerseys, all the new players from Mims and all the guys. Never met these guys, but I feel like I've met them because I pay so close attention to the Denver Broncos. Still close with Patrick Surtain, Cortland Sutton, Garrett Bowles. We probably talk once or twice every single month. Last month, we never even had the idea that we would be in a playoff game playing against each other. But me and Gary Bowles, we talk like it's when I'm on the phone with Gary Bowles, it doesn't feel like he's on the Denver Broncos, on the Buffalo Bills. It just feels like we're in a locker room on whatever team it is, and we just catching up with each other. It's all love and respect. And when I watch those Broncos games, yeah, some players that I don't know, but the infrastructure of the team and the people like from Patrick Smythe and Flip and all the guys that have been there, that's still the same. It still looks so familiar when I watch these games. So can't even start to play that. It's the Denver Broncos. I want to win. It's none but love. But those small 3 to 4 second bursts when I'm playing in the game, that 60 minutes when I'm out there, I want to win. I want to win the game. I want to beat the Denver Broncos. It's all love at the end of the day. But those small 3 to 4 second bursts, I gotta go through these guys to get where I want to go, and it's kind of weird, but that's just how crazy the NFL is and the universe is. So instead of trying to fight it, I just embrace it. It's a cool event, to be able to play against this new and improved, Denver Broncos. The last time that they made the playoffs was, last time we won a Super Bowl. So it's a full circle moment, and it's nothing but love and respect for the Denver Broncos and Broncos country for sure.
9.5 years with the Broncos before he was sent to the LA Rams, where he immediately went off and won a Super Bowl, his second of his career. And then after the stint with the Rams, he's been with Buffalo for the last 3 and hasn't played more than 13 games, which is what he's played this season with them, as he's 35 years old at this point. But Miller, a future Hall of Famer, and obviously a guy that still feels very closely about the Denver Broncos and associates himself with the Denver Broncos, reminds me a little bit, it's somewhat different, in the Ray Bork situation, when Bork was traded to the Avalanche from the Boston Bruins. At that point, the Bruins kind of knew they were in a down phase. Bork was kind of expensive, but he'd done so much for the team. They wanted to send him somewhere he could win. Bork went to the Avalanche. They won immediately. Miller went to the Rams. They won immediately. The difference is that Miller decided to keep the career going because he realized in Buffalo, a Super Bowl window was open for him. But to hear those comments, I think it's heartening for Broncos fans to see how much Miller still loves the Broncos and maybe even thinks of himself as many ways as a Bronco. But as he pointed out, between the lines, 60 Minutes on Sunday, he's going to try to go get Bo Nix.
Yeah, I actually give Vaughn a lot of credit because it was obviously a very well thought out comment that he made. And look, he knew it was coming. I mean, he knew immediately that he was going to get asked that. He's probably going to get asked it multiple times. And so he obviously spent some time thinking about exactly how he wanted to answer that question. I don't think Broncos fans, and I don't think NFL fans or Bills fans for that matter, should be surprised at all by what he said. Like I said, it was very well thought out, but look, he won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP trophy with Denver. It's not like he left on a sour note. Denver did him right. They traded him to a contender, and he turned around and won a Super Bowl. He has absolutely no reason to be upset or to have any kind of animosity towards the fan base, towards the orange and blue, towards the organization, towards the ownership, towards anybody. He's had a great career, and it all started with that number 2 pick that took place with the Broncos and with John Elway and company. So I loved what he had to say. I thought it was great. I think it's what Broncos fans would expect from Von Miller. And I think it's why he's so loved here still. Sean, you and I go to the games, the number of 58 jerseys that are in the stands. I mean, heck, I saw somebody in a Von Bills jersey last weekend in the game against the Chiefs. So, I mean, there's just a lot of love for Von Miller in this town. And I think he shows that it's very much reciprocated by him.
Yeah, 8-time Pro Bowler, all of those with the Denver Broncos. Since leaving the Broncos, we pointed out, of course, the career totals for him, 110.5 with the Broncos, 129.5 overall, 19 sacks in the 3.5 seasons, basically, since he moved on from the Broncos. But this may be, quite frankly, even though the sack numbers are a bit down, this may be the most effective season he's had with the Bills, who have a little more ability now to rush the passer without him. You're talking about guys like A.J. Epinesa, like Greg Rousseau, who don't have big sack numbers. But at the same time, the Bills do get pressure on the quarterback. They have a good defensive backfield. That means you're keeping the quarterback in the pocket. It's not like the Broncos kind of pass rush. They lead the league in sacks with 63. The Bills aren't sending the house after the quarterback, but they pick and choose their spots. And when they do, a guy like Rousseau has really come on and become a very good player. We know that Epinesa was a good player all the way back, to college when he was coming out of college there. And then Miller comes in from time to time and does his thing. Now the difference is when 58 is on the field, he has one job. He's coming after the quarterback. It does streamline it for the Broncos offensive line, Nate, because they know he's coming. At the same time, stopping him, even at the age of 35, isn't that easy.
No, it isn't that easy. Now let's remember he's number 40 for the Bills now. He switched up his numbers.
That's right.
So at least he got the 58 out of there. Makes it a lot easier when eventually you have to retire that number. Anyway, look, he played 25% of the snaps on defense for the Bills. That's obviously a very small number, but he's very efficient when he's there. And so as you pointed out, and as we know from the way the Bills will play defense and the way they've done it all season long, they are going to find ways to be able to put him into situational opportunities where he can try to wreak havoc on Bo Nix. That's his job. That's what he does. And at 35, he is still really, really good at it. He talked about my 3 or 4 second bursts. Folks, we watched it for years. We know what those 3 or 4 second bursts look like. And the crazy part is, even at 35, and even with the games he's missed for injury and things like that, he continues to have that really strong burst. He continues to be such a smart defensive player in terms of trying to get into the backfield and wreak havoc. So I love the fact that he loves Denver, but damn it, that offensive line better be ready.
Yeah, they absolutely have to be ready, because the one thing you can't do with the Broncos is you can't find yourself. We've talked about it before. Broncos in 3 and outs, 3rd worst in the league, or 30th, if you want to put it that way. A quarter of their drives this year, 3 and outs. As we've talked about before, pressures cause interceptions. That's what the Broncos try to get done, and that's what the Bills get done. It's not about sacks. It's about pressures. Bo Nix, when he gets pressured, and he will have to be smart with the ball, choosing when to run, when to get it out of bounds, whatever he needs to do to avoid getting that big loss, because the Broncos offense simply isn't built to do very well when it's 3rd and 8 or more. Their success rate, every team's success rate is down, but the Broncos in particular have a problem with that. So I think going forward, you want to do a couple things with that offensive line, Nate. I think that even though Sean Payton's not a big running guy, you do want to run a little bit. You do want to make sure that you're not putting Bo Nix, exposed him back there with that many dropbacks. He was 6th in the league in dropbacks this year. That's a lot, and that's a lot of opportunity for Miller and company to go after him. I think the Broncos have to approach this in a little more traditional phase. Now, can it be handoffs up the middle or handoffs off tackle? It can. The Broncos like throwing those short passes. That can work too, because if you spread those guys out a little bit, it's a longer path to the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. You're trying to, essentially create wings, and spread those wings out and force the defense to pay attention to what's going on the outside. I think that is going to be really important. I think that's part of why, what we've seen in terms of the offense's ability to get Marvin Mims going. I think that's something that factors into this game. But let's keep in mind, whether it's a running play, whether it's a short pass out to the outside, any of those kinds of things, remember that comes as a gift if you're not down by double digits. And that is also extremely important. And I know we've talked a lot about what this defense needs to be able to do for the Broncos against Josh Allen and company, and we will continue to do that leading up until Sunday. But what this offense can do and how they can get creative, whether it's Von Miller or Russo or otherwise, is entirely dependent upon making sure that scoreboard is not getting out of hand. Because the moment that happens, as we all know, it changes the script, and it changes what you can do. And you can't, you can't go 3 and out under any circumstances. They need to minimize the 3 and outs. And I know that will be something that they will be heavily focused on as they get into the 2025 season and when they get into the offseason and the draft. But no matter what, you cannot do it if you're down by a touchdown. You cannot do it if you're down by 10, if you're down by 13. Now those 3 and outs become even more painful because you're sending an offense out there that already is sitting on what could be considered a comfortable lead for sure at home. And you're giving them an opportunity to build on that, even if all it is 3 points. Now, all of a sudden, that 10-point lead is 13. Now the 13 is 16. Even if the defense can do their job and keep them out of the end zone, they got to keep them out of the uprights as well.
We'll talk about the matchup with Sean Payton and Sean McDermott with Sean Keeler of the Denver Post in just a little bit. But we know that Payton's not a heavy running guy. Doesn't mean he can't get done. But you're especially right on the 3 and outs. And you've talked about this multiple times during the year. You're okay with 6 and outs. You're okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not every drive is going to come away with points, but you don't want those 3 and outs, because if you're moving the ball at least 15, 25 yards down the field before you punt, you're no longer losing the field position battle. And you're right. The other problem with the negative game script, if you get behind a team that throws a lot, as we pointed out, Bo Nix 6th in the league in dropbacks, then they know you're going to throw.
Yes.
And that makes it a lot easier to come after the quarterback. And for Von Miller, over the last 2 games, I mean, get this, you talk about efficiency. 2 of his 6 sacks have come in the final 2 games of the year. They're ramping up a little bit. But against the Jets, he got his sack taking only 14 snaps.
Yeah.
And against the Patriots, he got his snap playing only 3.
Yeah, but it's
3
fun.
snaps, 1
yeah,
sack.
but it's fun when the sack comes against the Jets. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just as a whole side note, that's fun. That's fun. Look, he is efficient. We all know what he's capable of doing in the postseason. And look, you want to talk about playoff Jamal? I think there is such a thing as postseason Vaughn. Okay. I just think there is. I think this guy, even at 35 years old, I don't even care if he was 38 years old right now and was still playing. He has another gear in the postseason. I truly believe that he still does. And just like we've talked about postseason Jamal, even though I have no idea where that guy went, it's true with Vaughn. And as the season has gone along, remember we talked about this earlier in the season with Derrick Henry. The Derrick Henry actually gets harder to tackle the more the game goes.
Yeah, because you're tired.
He doesn't get tired. He's ready to bowl you over by the time it gets to be the late 3rd and 4th quarter. That is how Derrick Henry is so damn dangerous as a running back, is because he gets better as the game goes on, and you as a defender get more and more tired. But you're exactly right, Sean. When it comes to 3 and outs, look, just no 3 and out. I don't get 5 and out, 6 and out. Fine. I can handle that. And you want to know part of the reason I can handle that, and I brought this up on the shows over the course of the last couple of months, it's because if you've done that, you have better field position for your defense because you've at least moved some down the field. You don't have your punter trapped 3 yards in his own end zone. You're getting out and you're getting mobile and you're getting out at least closer to midfield so that hopefully your special teams can do their job and pin Josh Allen down. That's why I say that I'm okay with a 5 and out or a 6 and out, because now you're playing the field position game. And that to me is vital for this Broncos defense.
Yeah. Von Miller in his career, when you're talking about the 13 playoff games, 10.5 sacks with the Broncos. He had 6.5 and 7. And of course the Super Bowl. With the Rams, he had 4 sacks in 4 games and a Super Bowl. Yeah. Teams with Von Miller in the playoffs go 9-4 and 2 rings. The guy gets the job done in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you got to pay attention to that real quick, as you were talking about trying to get to the outside, trying to spread that offense out, trying to get away from some of the pressure of the interior that this Bills defense can do. Please keep in mind that the Bills are one of the lowest in the league in terms of yards allowed on the ground, basically 63 yards, 3.4 per carry. Over the course of this season, only 2 teams managed to average more than 4 yards per carry against them, and one of those was because it was Saquon. Okay, you just don't get yards against this team. This is going to be a game that tests Sean Payton and his creativity and what he can do to get his backs involved, understanding that he's not likely going to be able to do it up the middle.
Yeah, keep an eye, obviously, on Javonte Williams, who has taken over kind of a Samaje Perine role, third down back, best guy in blitz pickup. The Broncos have in running backs, which is really, really important because you do not want Bo Nix on third down to get smoked. And speaking of that, exactly.
Speaking of smoked, let's talk about it this way.
We call that a segue.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me talk about our friends at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. Always appreciate them being a part of the program, and they have re-upped as one of our big sponsors here on MHS Today for 2025. We appreciate Terry, Kook, Brett, and the entire crew at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. If you haven't tried it yet, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for, folks. We are talking about hardwood, slow smoked meats, sides made fresh every single day. And in fact, when you walk into one of their locations, you're going to see a chalkboard up above the register. And that's because they take everything from scratch so seriously that sometimes, man, if you get in there a little bit later in the evening, they may be out of something. Don't take offense at it. That is why it tastes so good, is because they're not just sitting there hiding it in the back and bringing it back out the next day. When they're out, they're out. They make sure that they stay on top of it when it comes to the pulled pork, when it's the burnt ends, the brisket, the ribs. All of it is so good, and the sides are fantastic. By the way, if you like collards, holy cow, some of the best I've ever had. I want you to go check out one of their locations. You can go to the Stanley Marketplace. That is where they first started out with their brick and mortar. Then they've got one at the corner of Dry Creek and University and Centennial. They are in the Golden Mill in Golden as well, and the newest location is open up in Wheat Ridge. And remember, takeout, catering, they can cover it all for you. RollingSmokeBBQ.com, RollingSmokeBBQ.com. And when you stop by, tell the crew that Nate and Sean from Mile High Sports sent you.
Absolutely. I didn't think about a day like today with the snow blowing all around. That smells.
Well, it's just like I
can smell it in my.
I throw out the idea of the takeout and stuff like that, because you know how you just get those days where you're just like, man, I do not want to cook, man. I don't want to cook. The beauty is you stop by, pick up stuff from this, give them a call ahead of time. Just say, hey, I'll be there in about 20 minutes. They'll get it all ready for you.
Yeah. So give them a try. Of course, delicious. The place over at Rolling Smoke, and lots of options to get there. For the Denver Broncos, we talked about the pass rush of the Bills and how it's a little bit different than the Broncos. The Broncos, of course, the NFL's leader in sacks and setting a new franchise high in the process this year. But even though Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper and company get a lot of the credit, and they should. I mean, they're getting it done. But the truth of the matter is the Broncos' defensive line, something that's been a problem for them for a long time, is now one of the biggest assets on the team. The group of Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers and DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach, that foursome has really been extremely effective, and they have given those guys some options. Some of the numbers for you. Zach Allen, snubbed for the Pro Bowl. Not that matters all that much, but Zach Allen led the league in quarterback pressures, 67 of them. And if you go to NFL Next Gen Stats, what they call quick pressures, meaning that they got to the quarterback in under 3 seconds. He had 22 of those. And we're talking about a defensive end in a world where nowadays most of the sacks are coming from guys that we traditionally called the linebacker position. Now we call edge rushers. It's kind of the same thing. Outside linebackers maybe play with a hand down or they blitz. But either way, that's an incredible performance for the season from Zach Allen. And Allen not only, of course, has sacks of his own, but you're talking about a guy that when the pressure comes right up the front, it makes it so much easier for the guys coming around the outside to scoop up the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how you try to play this defensive game, right? It's the misdirections. I think one of the things that we've learned as football fans over the course of the last couple of decades is, I think, as some of these defenders have become bigger than just the, big fat guys in the trenches, right? Like we used to sometimes think about some of these defenders, and we've started to realize the quickness that exists now with some of the defenders and their ability to get into the backfield. I think one of the other things that's come along with that is an understanding that the misdirection that we talk about so much on the offensive side of the ball in the NFL exists just as much on the defense, in terms of, we see that a lot, especially if you ever take any time to watch the All-22 film. But it's one of the things I always enjoy about the Sky Cam. Ever since the Sky Cam came into play with the broadcast, I love that viewpoint that happens when you're behind the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's one of the things I think that has been great about that technology that they've been able to utilize in the broadcast now is the ability to see, you can see an offensive play develop. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, for all of us that grew up playing Madden and I mean, playing NFL Blitz, I don't care any of those games. We all got used to that. Right. But I think one of the things that Skycam started to give us was that ability to see a defensive formation and play develop, the ability to watch a safety come up and then sit there and watch him all of a sudden go back.
Yeah.
And trying to think, like, if you were the quarterback under center, oh crap, what is that guy going to do? Is he coming? And so it put you, I think that Skycam, especially as you started to analyze defenses, started to make you as a fan somebody that you started to pay attention to how a defensive play developed. You started to watch a defensive end all of a sudden swim to the inside, right? Or you watch these guys crisscross and suddenly the quarterback doesn't know where anybody's coming from. And most importantly, sometimes your left and right guards don't know where they're coming from either, right? Your tackles are out there on the outside paying attention to what's coming at them from the wings, but your guards get confused because all of a sudden there's been a switch as to what they were facing off with pre-snap. That camera angle has shown us the ability to have that misdirection that you're talking about. Suddenly you're thinking you've got to be concerned about what's happening up front. Here came the guys from the wings. It's on your blind side. Holy crap, now the quarterback's on his ass.
Yeah, I mean, misdirection is the really the important word, right? I mean, we talk about the way you think about it, guys write up plays on the whiteboard. We talk about play callers on offense primarily about that and the creativity. But the truth of the matter is defense is every bit as much about deception, because if the quarterback if they can tell what's going on, they can either change the way they're going to alter a route. They can audible into a different play. Who knows what? Peyton Manning, of course, legendarily good at that. So now more and more, in part because of the way Manning dissected defenses like to set up things and not show very much. And so for the Broncos, that means that when you're not showing very much, when you're not giving your rushers or your safeties an opportunity to come up and give anything away, you need more push from your defensive line than you did before. A guy like John Franklin Myers, who came in and really has been kind of the glue of this defense in a lot of ways, an outstanding trade for the Broncos to get him from the Jets. 12.6% pressure rate on his snaps. That's third on the Broncos. And when you're thinking, oh, well, it's Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. Well, it's Nick Bonito. But actually, the top guy is Cody Barton, who's been underrated, stepping in for Alex Singleton, your middle linebacker who they bring in from time to time. But he's not going after the quarterback as often as Myers. And then the beautiful part of that is, yes, are they pressuring the quarterback? But they're getting the run stops. DJ Jones, 11.8% is what they call a stop rate, which when you talk about defensive expected points added, basically it means, on a 3rd and 2 or something, you get stuffed. Jones is doing that at a 12% clip by himself. Malcolm Roach, who comes in and rotates along the defensive line, 10%. So the combination of these four guys, you can really see it. There's a stat called average depth. We know about average depth of target for receivers, average depth of tackle. And you want it to be obviously as close to line of scrimmage as possible. Take a look at those. DJ Jones, 1.7 yards, Allen, 1.2 yards, Sean Franklin Myers, 0.9. When these guys are getting their hands on it, guys, those plays go nowhere. So not only are they getting to the ball carrier or the quarterback, but they're making sure that when they do, they don't get out. Their ability to tackle and make sure that guys can't break it is a really underrated part of this defense.
Yeah, I think that it really is. Look, they're gonna have their hands full. James Cook is. I mean, this Buffalo team is good as they come out of the backfield. And let's remember that Josh Allen is, for all intents and purposes, a running back by himself. He's got that kind of talent as well. Look, the Broncos' run defense is good. If you look at it statistically, it's not as good as Buffalo's. So, I mean, this is. this is a fascinating matchup to me on Sunday, whether we're talking about what's going on in the trenches, whether we're talking about these two quarterbacks, the story, of Josh Allen and Laramie and the pro day and all the, there are so many damn storylines and so many things I'm going to look forward to about this game that regardless of its outcome, I think we're going to watch what could arguably be one of the best games of the weekend.
I think there's an opportunity for that because some of the ways you match up, we talk about the idea of you have to contain Josh Allen, right? It's not quite like Lamar Jackson. He's not quite as explosive, but he is bigger and stronger and is not he's not as concerned about contact. So the fact that if you can get the push in your base defense from the front three, and by the way, base defense, people talk about 4-3-3-4. Base defense in the NFL is nickel for everybody all the time. Stop pretending it's anything else. Nickel is base. And the Broncos have that too with the Riley Moss and Pat Surtain and Jaquan McMillan. But when you're talking about the idea to get this sort of pressure or to contain Josh Allen, that means this game, with the way the defensive line is played, it's critical. If they can get the pressure at the middle and contain Cook, and you are right, Cook, I think, has been one of the most undervalued, underrated, underestimated running backs in the entire league. Go look at his touchdown totals. He's been a machine. And if they can do that, and if they can get pressure up the middle, it means that Cooper and Benito can play a little bit further wide. And if the Broncos choose to try to contain Josh Allen, that gives you a better opportunity to do it as long as the guys on the front three can do it and do the jobs the way they've been doing. The Bills' offensive line is good. It is not great. And Josh Allen tends to move around a lot, and his playoff record, quite frankly, is a little spotty. So if the Broncos could get pressure in their base defense, or at least enough to make Allen move a step or two earlier than he wants to, now all of a sudden that plays into the Broncos' hands. And in a game in which maybe, we talk about the favorite of the Bills, they're almost a 10-point favorite, and I understand why. But the NFL this year has been a one-score league, period. And the Broncos defense is a top 5 across the board. So now when you look at this possibility, a turnover, if you can force a turnover and you can win the turnover battle in this game, I think they have a real chance of beating the Bills. It is not easy. They are not favored, quite frankly. Spoiler alert for tomorrow, I do not expect the Broncos to win. But do I totally rule it out? No, I don't, because the history of the Bills and with Allen is the turnovers do happen at inopportune times if you don't overcommit. And if that defensive line performs the way it has all year, the Broncos don't have to overcommit. They don't have to send the safety. They don't have to send Barton over the middle and expose that part to the tight end. It gives them an opportunity to win. And even though they won't probably get a lot of attention, that front three and rotating in might be the difference for this defense, because what Surtain does, what Brandon Jones does, what Riley Moss does, and even what Cooper and Benito do, it's all enabled by the defensive line.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Now, you can talk all you want about Josh Allen and trying to force him into mistakes. I want to point out this: 28 touchdowns, 6 picks.
Yeah.
28 touchdowns, 6 picks. 28 touchdowns, 6 picks. Guess what? Every game that he had a pick in, they won. They still won.
Yikes.
Including the game against the Colts where he had 0 touchdowns and 2 picks. They still won. That's why this team is dangerous. That's why they're the 2 seed. And if it weren't for all the flukiness with the Chiefs this year, they would be the 1 seed, and we'd be preparing for the Broncos to play the Chiefs.
Which, quite frankly, would probably be a better matchup for the
Broncos.
But they get what they get.
I'd much rather be. I mean, I hate playing at Arrowhead because I think it's an incredibly difficult place for any team to be able to play. But frankly, I'd rather be facing off with that team right now because they got all kinds of chinks in their armor.
Yeah, they do. And the Bills maybe have less, but they do have,
care how many F-bombs Travis Kelce wants to drop.
A lot of weight is on the Bills. And for the Broncos, one of the advantage here is that they're basically playing with house money, right? That there's a lot of people that don't expect them to win this game, didn't expect them to win the playoffs, didn't expect them to even get into 6 wins on the season, and here they are. And I think for Sean Payton, who has kind of oddly run this team with an attitude that is more akin to a college program, right? The idea that nobody believes in us, guys, let's just go out and show them it. That's not a normal way to that you see for a professional team. But because the Broncos have been down for so long, because their roster is almost entirely composed of guys who have never played a playoff game, let alone started one, it's an attitude that maybe works. And for Sean Payton, the idea that you can go out there and just say, hey, guys, just go play the way you play, free and loose. No one expects us to win. Go out there and maybe we surprise somebody. And that's an opportunity for them. But yes, it's going to be a very difficult game. And I think for the Broncos, who love going after the quarterback, who really like pursuing the quarterback, quarterbacks like Allen, quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, they do limit them from doing what they want because you simply can't angle right at the quarterback and send the house. Those two guys are too mobile and too skilled. They'll break that protection, and then you really have a problem.
Yep, absolutely, without question.
So for the Broncos, we'll find a way to see how that works out over the course of the week. It will be a lot on Sean Payton and Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator, to find a way to stop the very, very talented Buffalo Bills. But the coaches will be a big part of this as well. And the Broncos have a more experienced one. That is part of their advantage. We'll get a chance to talk to our friend Sean Keeler in just a moment. But if you're looking for the place to work, play, exercise, and socialize, we've got the spot for you. Look no further than the Denver Athletic Club, right in the heart of downtown Denver. As a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like a full fitness center, spa, massage. You're expecting that, right? But how about the licensed child care center? How about a golf simulator? Even more. But what truly sets the DAC apart is that vibrant community. It's member-owned, which means it's all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, and fun for the entire family. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life. So look at joining the DAC today. Visit denverathleticClub.cc for all the details. Always delighted to have a chance to talk to our next guest, the 2024 Colorado Sports Writer of the Year from the Denver Post, our friend Sean Keeler. First, welcome to the show. And second, congratulations.
And that's a very kind intro. Appreciate you having me. Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Thanks so much. Obviously, well-deserved on the award. And you know a little bit this year about talking about coaches. We'll just leave it at that. So I wanted an opportunity.
or not talking to coaches, as the case may be. Yeah, I'm an expert on not talking to them.
You can learn a lot from afar, too, at times. And in this case, we have a chance. And it was kind of funny because, when we talked about this and set this sketch up, we had a couple ideas with the segment. And I realized, okay, wait a minute. I'm named Sean. Mine's spelled differently than you guys. You're Sean. We're talking about Sean Payton, Sean McDermott. So I don't know what do we call it? And I did some research. Okay, so I tried to go with the alliteration, although I liked coterie, which is what you call prairie dogs, or parliament of owls, or mob of kangaroos. But I like the alliteration. So help me out here.
A murder of crows is my favorite.
That's a good one. But to stick with the S theme, apes. A group of apes is a shrewdness. Mm-hmm. Foxes are a skulk. Rhinoceroses are a stubbornness. Maybe that one would work. A group of jays is a scold, and squirrels are a scurry. Like, can we borrow any of those?
A scurry of Sean's? I think that's what you can title the podcast.
Yeah, I think I like that one. A scurry. I think that goes pretty well. Not too bad at all. But when we talk about this coaching matchup, obviously you're talking about two guys with very different careers. Sean McDermott has had a very promising start to his career. His regular season winning percentage is actually better than Sean Payton, but Sean Payton, of course, has quite literally exactly double his regular season career wins. Payton was coach of the year in 2006. Of course, we know he's also won the Super Bowl. He's top 20 all-time in wins. He's more experienced. He has had more opportunities in this type of field. Does he give the Broncos at least an edge in the coaching matchup?
I think so, but not as much as you'd like and you'd hope, given their respective resumes. And I say that out of due respect to McDermott. We're going to have to do last names, obviously, with all of us here for the scurry of Sean's. We're just going to refer to everyone. Just, hey, Keeler, which is what, my buddy, what my bosses call me when they're
I get called Drotar more than I get Sean. I get it.
There we go. But so I think with McDermott, it's a fascinating kind of contrast when you look at these two guys, because fundamentally, as you look at this matchup and from the top down, these two coaches make no secrets about, as is the case, as you've met a lot of coaches and a lot of NFL coaches over the years, their biggest influences in their growth along the tree and where they came from, because those apples don't roll very far. And in big moments, and you know this full well, in big moments and in crisis moments is where they refer most often and more frequently to their senseis, to their Jedi masters, the people whose trees from which they came. And in the case of Sean Payton, that's Bill Parcells. And you start to see that come out for as much as he's done individually. I jokingly call him Baby Bill because he just kind of can't let that go. That's who he is. And for Sean McDermott, that's Andy Reid. And that's a really interesting contrast for what we know, obviously, of Andy Reid and seeing him all the time in the division. So I think how they delegate, how they deal with the media is very reflective of that, although Sean at times will be kinder than his mentor, although it depends on his mood and his moment, obviously. But Andy Reid, having covered him a little in Kansas City about a decade ago, I was, watching the Peyton Manning era from afar. During the Alex Smith era, I was covering the Chiefs some, and Reid was one of the most level-headed, like relief pitcher personified for being this big cheeseburger eating, this personality that he's taken on now that he's won a lot. That he's become sort of America's cheeseburger, Snickers eating, jokey State Farm coach. He's pretty on the ball that way. And not having dealt with McDermott a lot, I sense he's that way too. And Peyton is generally, but I think there's a little bit, there's still, and we, as we know, and I've seen it, we've all seen it. There's still those Parcells moments where usually one of the beat writers will say something he disagrees with, and the piranha comes out, and and he has to snipe back and remind us how stupid we are. I don't see that with McDermott a lot, and I think some of that comes from Reid, because you very rarely see that with Andy. I think Andy just kind of keeps everyone on the level, and to some degree at a bit of arm's length, which Sean does too. But I think their interactions are a little different. I think their delegations are a little different.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Peyton, and when you talk about Parcells, and you talk about Reid, you're talking about some of the winningest coaches of all time. You're talking about Super Bowl champions across the board. But you're right, comparing and contrasting the two, because I agree. I think that Sean Payton, sometimes you have a chip off the old block. I think that Sean Payton is virtually like a carbon copy of Bill Parcells in the way he approaches the game. And I think when you look at a game, that becomes interesting. The point you made about guys in the clutch, they will revert to what their training, their coaching instincts are, and that does go back a bit. In McDermott's case, what you see, and I think what you've seen, is similar to Andy Reid, so much in when Andy Reid has had so many different quarterbacks, so many different setups with the Eagles and with the Chiefs. And I think what he has done that's so remarkable is, you ask, what is Andy Reid's style? I don't know. Andy Reid's style is to be creative and adjust and adapt to his personnel.
It's pragmatic.
His personnel happens to be, right?
And pragmatic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Whereas the Parcells Payton approach is, this is what I do. Yeah. Yep. Well, we saw that with Russell Wilson last year, and Russell Wilson statistically is actually pretty similar in the performance to Bo Nix, but it was bristling at the way that Russell Wilson played his whole career and the way Sean Payton does things. Now that there's a better fit with Bo Nix, we don't see as much friction, but Payton still has that Parcells vibe in, this is how we do it. We do it my way. I don't care how you played before. We do it my way. And that works as long as you've been able to assemble your own roster, which Payton in rather short order has been able to do. But given Payton's basically sort of rigidity and McDermott's flexibility, especially when you talk about an improviser like Josh Allen, how can that rigidity in those moments actually help overcome someone who's a little more flexible, a little more pragmatic, a little more responsible based on the situation and the personnel?
Well, I think it comes down to trust and rote, because really, certainly in all sports, but definitely in football, it's just repetition. I mean, the best and worst thing about Sean Payton in the playoffs is what you're getting from Sean Payton in the playoffs. So there are wrinkles. I was at the Super Bowl he won when he beat Peyton Manning. I will still remember the riverboat gambler moment that they did with that onside kick, and what they did to pull that off, and an upset that not a lot of people saw coming with that Saints team. So but historically, to your point, that's he builds the box and makes you try to fit to it, whereas Andy takes the tools, and certainly McDermott's shown that acumen to adapt to what he's got. And to that point with McDermott, actually, it said about the greatest, what now we're calling, I guess it's supplanted the Ice Bowl as the greatest NFL postseason game ever, that Bills Chiefs overtime showdown 21, whatever it was 2-3 years ago, that basically forced a change in the overtime rules. So I guess anything that forces how you do like the 1968 baseball season, when it makes you adapt to something and change something, it has some impact. That he admitted McDermott admitted he was too conservative. McDermott admitted he needed to open up the way his mentor had opened up and adapt to the things that Josh Allen can do in the way that the game has changed, obviously, in being a QB coach league. So, yeah, I think that's a great point on your part, that's probably the biggest contrast, and the hope, at least from a Broncos standpoint, for all these guys who haven't been in the postseason before, certainly the veterans who haven't, is knowing what they do and the trust in what they do has some value in a loud, uncomfortable, intense environment. And with the exception, because I covered this game in Baltimore, with one game in Maryland, that's kind of served them well. This has been an awfully good road team, all things considered, relative to that. I think that will help. And I think, to your point about that rigidity, I think that's where that comes into play as a base when you're going to unfamiliar climates. Just like running the ball in defense, it travels well. But this is a different kind of time of year. And I think what does help you is the ability to surprise when everybody's good. What's going to separate it? And that comes down to coaching, preparation, and execution, obviously. And the contrast between those two guys is going to be very stark in that regard.
We know that over the course of the season, Sean Payton has done a very good job with bringing Bo Nix along. Obviously, there's been the hiccups you expect. It's the first time that Sean Payton has ever had to start a rookie quarterback for any stretch of time. In fact, that only happened in one game prior to Bo Nix's debut this year. And not only bringing Nix along, but I think we're starting to see the payoffs of Marvin Mims, of the way he's been brought along now, having the best kind of performances of his young career and becoming a regular part of the Broncos offense. So I'm not suggesting that Payton is not creative. He is creative, and he does so with package substitutions more than a lot of pre-snap deception and things like that. But going from week one until now, what have you seen of the improvements of the Denver Broncos offense, still somewhat limited, that might be able to surprise Buffalo a little bit?
I think it's the vertical passing game. I think it's you mentioned Mims, and in his narrative and his getting from point A to point B, Devon Vele, how many of those, I think of a particular throw, and I'm going to get the timing of it wrong, but there was one deep ball. He's thrown a couple of these. Well, actually, one he threw to Mims. I'm trying to remember the game. I don't want to think it was Carolina, but where he threaded two guys. I remember, and it was right over the hash. And I remember saying to Ryan McFadden sitting to my right, Russ doesn't make that throw. One, he's not looking to hit the hash. And two, I don't think he can put a beam on a seam on those two guys anymore. So the relationship on the deep ball with Franklin, with Vele, I think has come light years in game time from what we saw in training camp and what we saw in the preseason. And it was already starting to get up to speed at a pretty good clip. I think the ability to stretch this Buffalo defense is going to be important, especially in the context that the big matchup problem in this game, and I know you guys have talked about it, is unfortunately what the Broncos do well, the Bills will happily invite them to do. Right. Bring pressure, make their super strong, super mobile, pretty accurate Pro Bowl quarterback, potential future Hall of Fame quarterback, have to make decisions and take off, or dump it to tight ends and running backs and make your linebackers go chase them in a foot race. And that's when everyone kind of knows it. I'll be very curious, coach on coach, how they counter it.
Yeah, that part is interesting because you're exactly right. We talked about it, that the teams like the Bills and the Ravens, if you were to play like the Commanders, these are a bit of a problem for the Broncos because they can't do what they do best, at least not in the same fashion. But as you pointed out, Sean Payton you kind of know what you're getting. And oftentimes it is less about him surprising you and just more about the execution. If the execution is good, Sean Payton offenses tend to be good. Now, obviously, Bo Nix is not Drew Brees. At this point, he may never be Drew Brees. Probably, quite frankly, won't ever be Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. But as that's gotten better over the course of the season, it does feel like there's an opportunity there. What the Bills do best on defense, for the Broncos, how can they exploit that? Obviously, Nix has the ability to go downfield, but the Broncos offense is still predicated on not just short passing, but oftentimes really short passing.
Yeah, ironically, it's kind of the same thing because I think I found a stat. The Bills have a really good pass rush, really good defense. Sean McDermott's background obviously is a difference from Andy. He's defense. Sean Payton is offense is their histories coming in. I think Nick's ability to extend the pocket and to get out of trouble. I think Nick's legs could be huge in this because then he presents the same challenge to the Bills defense that Von Miller, et cetera, that want to get after it and want to put you in bad downs and distances. The thing that Sean loves, Sean's against the scurvy of Sean's, that Payton loves most about Nick's, and he mentioned again yesterday in the open press access outside, was the sack ratio, the sack differential, that Bo Nix doesn't put you in bad second and longs, third and longs, the way that Russell Wilson does and could escape from it, or collegiately Shedeur Sanders could throw his way out of. That's why, not to get digressed, but that was one reason why I'm not sure Shedeur and Sean Payton would necessarily be a great ring, because Sean cares about the numbers, Sean cares about the system, Sean cares about the process. So I think Nick's has the ability to present that same kind of two-way challenge for the Bills linebackers and the Bills safeties, and the Bills defense that after that initial front seven isn't as good without Micah Hyde in the secondary. There are some ways that it can be exploited, and you might have to get into kind of I don't want to say shootout, but you might have to be like that. It might turn into like that Cincinnati game where it's going to come down to, can you make that drive and make that play? And that game from afar, because I was obviously at the Alamo Bowl while that was going on, and we were all following it, by the way. Very few people were watching it, I think Ralphie was watching that game too, because none of us were very interested in the warm-ups in front of us at the time, because of this amazing game going on in Cincinnati. But Nick showed me a lot in that from afar, where it's like, okay, this is going to be one of those against arguably the hottest QB and hottest offense this month, obviously, coming in with the way Cincinnati had finished. So I wouldn't be shocked if he had to do that again. I wouldn't be shocked if he could do it again, although the Bills' defense is several steps above what the Bengals trotted out, which wasn't much to speak of at all. And I think that mobility and that ability to be smart when in down in distance and on time is going to be massive, and it's going to be tested, because clearly the Bills are going to be there to try to take him out of rhythm and to make them in third and forevers, because this offense is in a lot of third and forevers. It won't be a 9-point game. It'll be a 17 and 18-point game if Buffalo run away from it. So I think everybody knows that. I think keeping the chains within reason is critical with this. Not turning the ball over, which I guess we course corrected from that little bad stretch late November, early December, is also going to be pivotal with this, because they can't give Josh Allen free possessions at home. And I think Allen gave them a few freebies last November, that Monday Night Football game, if I remember. You can't always count on that. And you sure as heck can't count on being that generous the other way in the postseason, or you're going home.
Yeah, and as Nate Lundy pointed out before you joined us, 6 picks on the year, and in each of the games in which you threw them, the Bills still won. So, I mean, losing the turnover battle might as well, pack your bags and start setting some tee times. But last one for you, Sean. Sean Keeler, of course. What have we seen from Bo Nix? Rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs tend not to do very well. Rookie quarterbacks on the road in the playoffs making their debut tend to do rather poorly. What is it about Nix's demeanor and ability that makes you think that this could be any different? Is it the experience from all the starts at Oregon and all the big games that he played in there?
I actually have got a piece I'm working on that'll be in the Sunday Denver Post on that very topic, foreshadowing. And one of his mentors, without giving it away, basically said his stubbornness, and a way to go back to something we all saw. You want to roll the clock back to that argument with Sean Payton on the sideline. That's the real Bo Nix. Like, Bo Nix is, yes, he doesn't swear. He's a God-fearing man. He's a good family man. He's kind of a crazy person under the lights in a good way. The way that all elite athletic competitors really are when it comes down to it. And he's fairly aggressive. The more you push back on him, the bigger the counters, so to speak. So I'll be fascinated to see in this environment. And that's another reason I think why he's been so good on the road and why this team, besides the composure and the comfort in the system that's obviously grown, the comfort and consistency with each other, is they've got a quarterback who flat out refuses to lose. And he's lost, and he will lose this month probably at some point. But he doesn't think he should. And that's what I like to call a healthy arrogance. I think that's a hell of a trait, especially when you can back it up, because as we've seen this season and what we haven't seen with a lot of Broncos quarterbacks and Broncos offenses, when you can't walk the walk after that talk, everybody knows. But when you take those steps and you are pulling that team behind you, everybody will follow. And I think he's got that locker room, and that's been one of the big differences about this season.
He is Sean Keeler, the 2024 Colorado Sports Writer of the Year, and of course, putting everything together at the Denver Post. Make sure you read everything that he's doing at the Denver Post and get ready for that Sunday story about Bo Nix as well. Sean, thanks for joining us. Always great to talk to you, and I guess we'll have to get that Scurry of Sean podcast going as soon as we can.
We had a name. Let's trademark that, baby. Let's do it. Anytime, brother. Let me know.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great time. Thanks, Sean Keeler, joining us. For the Broncos, of course, as he pointed out, at some point this month, likely the Denver Broncos will lose, and building towards the 2025 season will be part of it. The Broncos' ascension can continue with the draft. How can they do it? Well, we'll talk about that with Nate Lundy in just a moment.
At Hooters, you can watch all the games with your buddies. All your buddies. Like the ones with ice-cold beer. And wings that'll knock your taste buds into next Tuesday. You know, buddies you won't have to fight for the remote. Buddies who know a thing or two about football. And the fans who live for it.
Where else are you gonna get all this?
Hooters, your official hangout for game day.
When I go to court, these aren't my clients, these are my friends. These are people that I believe in. And they have one shot, just one shot for justice. If they've come to me and we've gotten to trial, their life has been turned upside down in some awful way. And I am their only hope. I need to be their champion, to quote Prince Oberyn from Game of Thrones. They need someone in this trial by combat that can fight for them. I'm all they have. So if I haven't put the time in, if I haven't trained, if I haven't humbly looked in the mirror and thought about ways I can be better, and I don't present my best self in court, then I failed them. And that's what motivates me as a trial lawyer, because when this is over, that client goes home. And if I haven't done my best for him, I haven't been his champion, then I've failed.
All right. Nate Lundy is back joining us.
Hello.
Nate, at some point,
Yes.
the Denver Broncos will lose a football game. Maybe it will be Sunday. Hopefully it won't, but at some point it will. The Broncos, I don't think, expected to win.
It'll be Sunday.
Yeah, it's more than likely to be Sunday. And that's one of the reasons we're taking a look at this. But the Broncos have overperformed this season. They're clearly on the right track. You heard about all the great things about Bo Nix with Sean Keeler a little bit ago, including that stubbornness, that lack, that belief that he shouldn't lose games. All that stuff is really good, but he also needs some help. And so looking towards the NFL draft a little bit, now that we know how it starts out, the Broncos will pick roughly at 19. It depends on what happens with the playoff results, obviously, but roughly 19, let's say. And looking at the needs for this team, some of them have shifted around. The signing of Garrett Bowles means the immediate need for a tackle goes away. There are still concerns about depth, obviously. When they signed Ben Powers, it wasn't to a supremely long-term contract. You still obviously can't have enough offensive linemen, but you look at defensive tackle. If DJ Jones moves along, that's something you need. There is always value, I think, in finding wide receivers, though Devon Vele and Marvin Mims now stepping up. And plus, I think that Bo Nix and former teammate at Oregon, Troy Franklin, are really close to syncing up. It seems like they've just been fingertips away. Yes. I don't think the Broncos wide receiver need is as pressing as a lot of people seem to think it is, but you could always get better. Running back obviously is a need because Javonte Williams is a free agent at the end of the year. I'd be stunned if the Broncos bring him back. Any running back has a tough time getting a second contract, given the injury situation. And now that he's kind of been reduced to a third down back, I think the Broncos have other ideas there. I don't know how much of a need there is as well, but you couldn't hurt by adding some to the room. To me, the pressing need, very simply, we've talked about it all year. You've got to get a tight end. Unfortunately, in this draft, There are two really good ones that they could get in the first round.
Yeah, give me Tyler Warren. End of story.
That would be the best one. The question is,
Period.
Are you picking too far down?
End of story. I think the Broncos are going to wind up at 20 or 21. I know you talked about 19. It could be somewhere in that range. Give me Tyler Warren. Give me Tyler Warren. Give me Tyler Warren. Give me Tyler Warren all day.
Would you trade up?
Yes. Yes. Look, you guys know we've had him on the show many, many times. I've talked about him. If you follow me on social media, you know that I talk about him a lot. One of my favorite guys out there that analyzes the draft is our buddy Matt Miller, who is now with ESPN, used to be with Bleacher Report. Known Matt for a long time. I think Matt is one of the best draft analysts out there. I really, truly do. He is very, very good at what he does. Let's keep in mind that Tyler Warren was not he was not the first round tight end when all of this started, right? I mean, if you go back to mock drafts that were done back in, the really early ones, July, August, things like that, right? He was not there. He now is. I believe in one of the mocks that's up right now. I want to say it's at ESPN. They've got him going number 17, which obviously the Broncos would be behind that.
Right.
You're going to miss out on that. So if you want him, if that's the way that it goes, you're going to have to move up. I think some of where he falls is going to be dependent upon where the quarterback run happens outside of Shedeur and Cam Ward, right? What else are we going to see from a quarterback standpoint that happens in, say, the top 15 picks? And maybe there are some things that slide down. You're right. I will say this, Sean. I'll come back to Tyler Warren in a second. You're right about the idea. Well, they signed Bowles. I don't care. I'll take offensive linemen all day long because they're hard to find. That said, I have read a number of things, including from Matt Miller, that there's not necessarily a lot of what they would call first round grade offensive linemen. There's a lot of day 2 guys. So perhaps that's the way that the Broncos go, and they don't decide to use a first round pick on somebody. They decide, hey, let's wait. Because we believe that we're not really dropping that far off in talent by waiting until day 2 when it comes to that. So I just throw that out there from an offensive line standpoint. Folks, if you're not familiar with Tyler Warren, watch the game tonight.
Yeah.
He plays for Penn State. They're playing Notre Dame tonight. If you're not familiar, you're talking about a dude that is 6'6" and 260 as a tight end, but he moves like he's smaller than that. This guy should not be able to move like he does. Here is the comp that Matt Miller has given him. And Sean and I have known Matt for a long time. Matt is not about hyperbole. Okay. In fact, he hates it when it comes to making draft comparisons. He said the comp for Tyler Warren is Gronk. I don't know what else you want me to say beyond that, man. That's insane because Matt talks about that. He does not believe in making a comp at that level, and he still compares Tyler Warren to Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, the John Mackey Award winner for the best tight end in the country. Tremendous stats.
Watch the game tonight. You'll get to see him because, again, he's playing tonight. I mean, the college football semifinal is tonight, and he plays for Penn State.
And he really is, in many ways, despite being a tight end, much like Gronkowski was, he's kind of the centerpiece of the offense.
He's got this, his footwork is good. He's quick. Once I saw Matt saying this, I was like, all right, I gotta, and I'd heard of Tyler Warren, but obviously I'm not sitting around watching Penn State Nittany Lion football on Saturdays. Okay. Sorry. So once I saw this from Matt, I was like, all right, now I gotta go check this out. I gotta figure out who this kid is. Man, he is fun to watch. He's a great tight end. And remember last year when we were talking about, I'm really glad the Broncos took Bo Nix. But remember who went right after him?
Brock Bowers.
Who
I think would be both of our, if we had a vote.
If we had a vote, he's my rookie of the year. He's my offensive rookie of the year.
I agree with you. I think he's been the best, especially when you consider he's got who knows what.
He's on a shit team.
Who's throwing to him?
He's on a shit team.
Guys like it's Desmond Ridder and Aiden O'Connell and look.
I like what Jaden Daniels is doing. I like what Bo Nix is doing, but what Brock Bowers is doing on that train wreck of a team is phenomenal. He's my offensive rookie of the year. I'm sorry, he is. Anyway, watch Tyler Warren tonight. That is where if the Broncos can do it at 10 o'clock at night on Thursday, April 24th, I will be doing a celebratory shot. I'll just put it that way.
The challenge with landing Warren is, of course, as we get closer to the draft process and the pre-draft process and the combine and all that, is there's a chance he will go up, especially given the fact, unfortunately, a year after Bowers, then teams tend to copycat and then they go after the next player like that. So Warren, I think the Broncos will probably have to trade up and get. If he does, if they don't, it's a no-brainer. But let me give you another option in case Warren goes
wide receiver
earlier. Well, I'm
wide
still
receiver.
going tight end because there's another option out here because I think that's where the most impact needs.
Go ahead.
That would be Colston Loveland out of Michigan.
Yep.
Now,
Ding, ding, ding,
Loveland
ding,
doesn't
ding, ding,
have
ding,
the
ding.
huge stats, but similar size, really good route running ability. A guy that probably, and I would say this, Loveland, I feel rather confident will be there when the Broncos pick, whether it's 18, 19, 20, 21. I think he will be there. I'm all for going after Warren, but Loveland would not be a bad consolation prize. Michigan obviously having a down year, not having a tremendous amount of numbers. 56 catches, 582 yards, 5 touchdowns. He did miss a couple of games. But keep in mind, he led the team in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns.
Here's the wrinkle I'm going to throw you as to why I will tell you
The
I don't.
nervousness of drafting a Michigan tight end that had injury, because that's fair.
Nope.
Sorry, Jake Butt.
You know who else needs a tight end? Jim Harbaugh.
Sure.
The Chargers need a tight end. Would you be shocked at all if the Chargers moved up for Harbaugh to draft one of his guys?
No, of course not.
I'm just throwing that. That's why I'm going to say he might not be there, and might be the reason that Tyler Warren is there.
Possibly. I think either one of those.
If
guys
Harbaugh's
would be
in love with his
excellent
own dude, wants to bring his own dude down to L.A., just throwing it out there.
It'd be kind of fun to have a guy named Loveland in Colorado. To be fair, pretty good jersey sales.
No, because we all thought the same thing when we had a dude named Butt.
Yeah, well,
that didn't actually work out.
No, injury much more severe. Of
Butt
course,
was
Loveland did finish his season, but to that point,
So
I think
okay,
you have to
we can
look
go
at
that route. I
think
I
the
know
first
what
round
you're
is the
saying
says that
about.
it's got to be tight end. That to me is gives
but
the Broncos the biggest.
But
immediate
what you
payoff.
need to be able to do is sit back and say, what if those two guys are not there? What if the rest of these teams picking in the teens recognize that they also need the position to be fixed, or somebody leapfrogs you or whatever to be able to move up and to be able to draft a guy? Because I really don't. I mean, I really like Warren, but I don't want to give up a bunch of draft capital to have to move around too much. So, a couple of spots to make it happen. Sure. But beyond that, I don't want to get crazy with the cheese whiz. Okay. But you need to have yourself a backup plan. It's like Coach Billick always tells us. You got to draft. You got to draft the best player available at a position of need.
Always.
Those are the things that happen. I will always side with Coach Billick on that one.
Receivers, the next one for you.
I think it would still be receiver.
I
I think and that's despite Franklin,
Vele
and Vele. I mean, I think there's a couple of
Zone.
stud. I think there's a couple of stud
There's
receivers
always
out
stud
there.
receivers out there now. It's where all the top talent ends up.
I mean,
wide
I think
receiver.
like I saw a mock. Let me throw this out there. I saw a mock draft out of somebody that had them taken Luther
Burden out of Missouri.
from Missouri.
Yep.
Here's why that won't happen, in my opinion. Because what kind of receiver does Sean Payton like?
Big.
This kid's
6'3" and more.
okay. He's 5'11".
Right. With the exception of Marvin Mims, of course, who Sean
He's
Payton was
5
behind.
Well, but my point is, you have your short guy.
Right.
I mean, if I'm going to overly simplify it, you got your short dude.
Short speed guy, you got him, and
You already got
let's face it. He's a two-time now All-Pro as a returner, which
you've
is
got
what I
it.
firmly believe.
Burden.
he was
Somebody
picked
has
as, and then
somebody.
whatever
I
he
can't
got
remember
was a
whose
bonus.
mock it is. Somebody's got the Broncos taking Burden at receiver, and I completely disagree with
I do
that
too.
because Sean Payton's not
He's
going to
got a
want a
type.
dude that's sub 6 foot.
He wants, I don't know, sub 6 foot.
He wants
sub 6'2".
he wants the height guys, and Travis Hunter will be long gone.
Yes.
McMillan out of Arizona is 6'5"?
Yeah, but he's not going to be anywhere near where the Broncos. He's going in the top 10 picks.
6'5", man.
I know. Going to top 10 though. I mean,
6'5",
McMillan's the best
210.
receiver in the draft.
Sexy.
Yeah, you're not going to get
84. Here's his stats this year: 84 catches, 1,319 yards, and 8 tutties.
Oh yeah, watched him a couple times from the box up at Folsom Field do
That's
some
sexy.
damage against Colorado.
The comp that Matt Miller gives him is Drake London.
There are some players that have value. You brought up the thing with Garrett Bowles too. Look,
I would still. I'm telling you, I know it's not.
have too
give
many
me-
offensive
Give
linemen.
me more offensive
If
linemen,
someone
baby.
like Cameron Williams of Texas is still sitting around there, can play tackle. I mean, and both the tight ends are gone. I'm okay with that. I mean, I think you're all right. You just can never have too many linemen. You just can't.
No, you can't. You can take care of linemen. They've already proven that they can find some edge rushers and things like that from a talent standpoint deeper in the draft. They've shown that. So I don't have an issue with that.
There's a lot of cornerback talent in the first round as well. Now I know that the Broncos like to have
that's the other. There's your wild card.
Look, Surtain, Moss, McMillan, you feel good about it. But
there's your wild card.
Behind it is basically zero. But behind those three guys, you basically have nothing. If I couldn't get the tight end, I would go to cornerback because, again, I think that's a player you need more personally. And I think there's more top tier talent there that's going to be will be available when the
that is going to be the case. And I don't
look
think
at Barron out of Texas, Amos out of Old Miss. Some of those guys, should be there. Ravel out of East Carolina, Morrison.
Starks won't be there.
Notre Dame might even be there. Starks won't be there.
Starks won't be there.
As a safety, I sure like that idea.
Yeah, but he's also like he's a guy, and again, I go to Matt's notes on this. Give full credit to Matt. He is a guy that is he can line up anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I know he's a safety, but they talk about like you can put him at corner. You can move him all over the field. He's just talented in terms of that backfield. Malachi Starks is who we're talking about for Georgia. Starks, but he's not going to be there. He's a phenomenal talent. He's going to be gone by then. But I think you're right. I think the wild card in all of it is if. And again, I'm following what a lot of the draft beatniks say, but these are guys that follow it more closely than you and I do, and guys that I trust. That's part of the reason why I've always followed Matt, is because he studies this crap more than I do, and so I trust him. If in fact the Broncos as an organization agree with what some of these guys are saying, which is there is a tremendous amount of good, if not elite, talent on the offensive line that are day 2 and day 3 type of guys, then that's where you may see the attention go.
You have to scoop up one arm more.
Sure. But you might say, we believe in, I'm going to make up a number, these 4 guys. And we believe that one of them is going to be there for us. And therefore, we don't need to make a move. We don't need to give up any capital. We don't need to do any of that to try to get to where we can take that guy. Then that takes you into day 2 and 3, and that might bring you to let's get some additional depth in our secondary.
It's also a lot easier to trade in those later rounds.
Yes, much easier.
You can move around a lot more.
You're not dealing with Bill Parcells and his draft value chart and all that kind of stuff. Was it Parcells? No.
Gruden.
No, well, Gruden did it, but it was
a lot of guys have draft.
Who started it back in like anyway, never mind.
It's been around for a while. Jimmy Johnson, sorry.
Thank you. That's who I was going. I was going like Dallas coach, and the only one in my head was Tom Landry because he's the only coach of the Cowboys that matters. But beyond that, he is. But beyond that, it would not surprise me to see that depth come in if they believe that value of the 4 or 5 guys of what they can do with those guys on day 2 is the right place to be able to be from an offensive line standpoint. Because a lot of folks have said, you can talk about, some of the talent that exists in a Kelvin Banks or in these offensive linemen for Texas or for LSU, et cetera. Campbell, the kid from LSU, right? Is that his name?
Yeah, Will Campbell.
So
he will not be available.
So when it comes to that, if you believe there's 2 elite and then there's a block.
Yeah.
Those of you that play fantasy football, you know how this works, right? It's like, okay, if I can't get this guy or this guy, then there's a block of dudes
kind of about the same.
It's like as soon as we all learned to stop drafting our fantasy teams based on a 1 through 50 and started looking at it in tiers, that's when you started to recognize where you can and can't find value. Well, I mean, I know it's just us sitting on our couch in our, grunge Seattle flannel today, but that you do an NFL draft kind of the same way. If you believe
there's
a grade that's very similar for all of these guys and that you as an organization are happy with any of them, that's one way to go. If the way that tier works, there's one guy that you go, nope, that's my guy.
Yeah.
That was Bo Nix. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's my guy. Then you do whatever you have to do to get that guy.
And maybe that's Tyler Warren.
And maybe that is Tyler Warren. Maybe you go, screw it, man. We're willing to move up 4 spots to take this guy because
they plug and play tight end. They need a guy that starts on day 1.
They need a dude that can come in. I mean, look, I said this in August. I'm so freaking sick of talking about the tight end position or lack thereof.
It's the new right
on this
tackle for
team.
the Broncos.
It is. You have got to
find
a way to answer that tight end position, and maybe they've got their eye on something in terms of a free agent, or I don't want to go too far down the road, right? By the way, I wanted to share one of the comps that I saw about Loveland, Dalton Kincaid, of the Bills.
There's some similarities, primarily in the route running,
in the route runs and things. So just, I know that sometimes for us, if we don't study these guys, that's one of the things that helps us.
Kincaid is not Gronk. I get it.
No, he's not Gronk. I mean, but again, man, I can't emphasize that enough. Matt hates the hyperbole with these guys in the draft because he's been studying it for decades. He understands the idea that there's so many guys that crash and burn. But the moment he did that, being somebody that knows how much he dislikes doing those kinds of comps, I thought, okay, now you got to pay attention.
And if you think
so I'm excited. I've seen it. Like I've seen some highlight film. I've seen a couple of the games actually live. I'll obviously be watching tonight with the game between Notre Dame and Penn State. I think that's going to be a big one. The Avs have a big game tonight against Minnesota, second night of a back-to-back. I thought Minor was okay last night. It wasn't great.
Some giveaways by the Avalanche.
Yeah, they kind of looked. That was one of those.
Shouldn't have dropped that game. You need to bounce back tonight
they were like meh. It's just some stupid plays.
Yeah,
with the puck.
It wasn't a good performance. A great performance that were bounced back by the Denver Nuggets, who end up just plowing through the Clippers.
Yeah, but aren't they? What's their record now on the second night of a back-to-back? 8-0. Thank you, Danny.
And he's got an 8-0.
I wanted to say 8-1, so thank you. 8-0.
Most of those 8 don't come without Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon, and this one did. Good performance there. Really credit.
Gordon's always got quite the fashion on
the early going of this season. As I would say, you talk about if you were to say the thumbs up and thumbs down move of the summer, obviously Dario Saric has been a more or less complete flop for the Nuggets. That was a disaster. Russell Westbrook has been far better than expected. And I feel sort of, I feel like I'm insulting him to say that because we're talking about a future Hall of Famer, but to watch the way he has fit in with the Nuggets, how much he still has left in the tank, really, really impressive play by Westbrook. I think in many ways, he is becoming one of the guys that sort of makes the Denver Nuggets go. And I think when you see a game like last night, Westbrook is sort of out there, and it's not necessarily he's a vocal guy. We know that. And he talked about taunting his old teammate Ivica Zubac after the game. But it's sort of the leadership idea. We started the show talking about Von Miller, right? Mm-hmm. And Von Miller at 35 years old is near the end, but he still brings a lot of cachet and people pay attention. Miller never wanted to wear the C. No, never wanted to be the captain. That's not who he was. What he did is he goes out there and he plays at a level that makes everyone else, if they don't match his effort, they're embarrassed. And last night, the Nuggets looked like a team with Russell Westbrook that he's sort of dragging them around like that. It's like, look, if I'm out here doing this at my age with the miles that I've put on my body, and you guys are just kind of going half speed, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I think that's kind of happening to the Nuggets. And I think that impact by Russell Westbrook is something I didn't expect.
I'm grateful for it. They've needed it.
Yeah, and they needed it last night, but they do indeed get the win. Nuggets 21-15, still hanging in the mix. Of course, last 2 games without Jokic and
There's
Gordon.
Absolutely no reason for us to be talking about this team as hanging in the mix. But I don't want to.
No, it's unfortunate. They
don't
need to get better.
That
you can say the same thing with the Avs, but the Avs, at least after the trade, seem to have turned things around.
It's just going to give me a headache, Sean.
Well, we may dig into them a little more next week. Hopefully, we're talking more about the Broncos. But tomorrow,
it's going to suck, man.
We're talking about all Broncos because a Football Friday is coming. Nobody does Football Friday like we do right here at
Be sure to tune in for Anilo and Danny are going to be at Hooters.
Yes.
With the Hooters girls making their picks. Mm-hmm. They're going to be getting their Football Friday
on the YouTube channel. Yeah.
And Nilo is going to have his betting picks for you. I'll have some of mine here on NHS Today for you as well. But go make sure you check that out tomorrow.
Our friend Troy Rank will join us, of course, from the Denver Post and the Broncos podcast with Troy Rank. Go subscribe to that. Justin Adams of the from CBS News Colorado will join us as well. Talk about a guy that knows tight ends. Justin played tight end up at the University of Colorado and knows a little bit about that position as well. We'll break down the game tomorrow with all of it. Thanks so much to Sean Keeler, who stepped in and joined us today. Always good to talk to him, Colorado sports writer of the year. Congratulations to Sean Keeler, the scurry of Sean's. I've never done that. I've never talked with another Sean about 2 other Seans. That's the first. Only a last. Can't imagine that's going to happen again. A little bit of fun. Thanks to Sean Keeler joining it for the scurry of Sean's during that break. Danny Bailey's the man that makes everything work, including reminding us the Nuggets are 8-0 in the second night of back-to-backs. He's Nate Lundy. I'm Sean Drotar. For everyone here at Miley Sports, we'll see you tomorrow right here on Miley Sports Today.